first night of Hanukkah. Be careful what you say. There's a lot of Tehillim where David HaMelech or the other Mishorers, the other ones who were speaking, say that they're going to make a korban to Hashem. Nidorayla Hashem Hashalem. L'cha is bach zevach todah. So we're just singing the words of Tehillim, but when they said it, it was basically a language of accepting upon themselves to bring a korban. So be careful what you say. It's throughout Tehillim. People are making promises to God to bring sacrifice. And by the way, this is a good thing. There's an idea someone was asking me about. Isn't it better if a person had, let's say, $1,000 to bring a fat bull as a burnt offering to the temple? Why doesn't he just give all that money to the poor? Don't the poor need it more? And that's a good question. Why are people giving so much to, let's say, beautify synagogues? And in the olden days, to beautify the temple and bring sacrifice, why not just give everything to the poor? Why does God need to have some just to, I'm going to say, almost just for show? And the answer is alluded to by the words of the sages and also almost explicated by the Rambam. They didn't say this explicitly in their days, but now we've realized this. There are different levels of tzedakah. Yes, giving to the needy in times of need is very important. The Rambam says the highest form of charity is to actually get someone on his feet, to help him get a job, help him begin to support himself. We've now seen, and Western, let's say, psychologists are coming around to this realization that just throwing money at chesed cases does not really help them. In the short term, person needs money right now, it does help. But people who are fiscally irresponsible, like the American government, like we said before, but let's say individuals who don't know how to deal with money, are perpetually poor, throwing money at them, creating, let's say, a welfare state, is not going to help them. It's just going to let the situation persist. So the sages realize that for many people, it's better to just give up and give to God. 1,000 shekels going toward a korban perhaps is better because it shows that someone's willing to give up on something. Perhaps also in times of war, we were saying before that it's wrong for the commanders, it's wrong for the government to deprive soldiers of their spoils. But it is perfectly legitimate for the soldiers to say that they're going to take a solemn vow to give of what they acquire in war to God. Where we have this once again with the Midianites. The spoils were kept by the soldiers and by Am Yisrael, and portions were given to the Levites and to the Kohanim. And the soldiers themselves afterwards gave an atonement gift to the Mishkan. They found all sorts of gold and silver, and they decided to give it as a kapara for their own souls. And that's a good thing. So yes, it's one thing if the soldiers decide on their own that many of them are going to give of what they receive in battle. It's another thing to just tell them, no, you're not allowed to because the commanders say so, because of international law, because of some newfangled quasi-rabbinic idea that it's morally wrong to take spoils, or that it's a distraction to take spoils and we should be doing it lishma. No such thing. But it's good if people want to give up what they're getting. So that's where the idea of korban comes from. Not always giving to the poor is the best thing. And sometimes it's good for a person to learn just to give up something and give it to God. And we're going to see this when we get to the Trumas Hadeshen idea, that part of the idea behind this, Rav Tzuriel writes this. You know what? Let's read what Rav Tzuriel says right now, because it's good. Every week we should have a teaching of Rav Tzuriel. He talks about the message behind the korbanot. Very important. He talks about, last week we were talking about humility, anava, and avoiding arrogance. And he says in the name of Rav Yisrael Salanter, this is in Shar Ga'ava Vanava, in the Otzros Musar, Volume 1. Rav Tzuriel, he says, Ma'aseh Shaya Kachaya. Viznambu Pam Rav Yisrael Salanter Talmido Rav Yitzchak Belzer. That's the Rav from St. Petersburg. Ba'asifa Sheyashavuva. Hold on a second. No, sorry, wrong story. Let's scratch that. Sorry about that. Wrong page. Oh, sorry. Yeah, not a story of Rabbi Salanter. He says here, Borei kama gedolim nimuchei haruach lefei HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Nimuchei haruach, people of lowly spirit, how much God likes them. Shebeshah shebeit hamikdash kayam, when the temple is standing, Adam makriv olah, schar olah biado, a person brings a burnt offering, so he has the reward. Whatever the reward is for bringing a burnt offering, he now has that. Mincha, schar mincha biyado. He brings a meal offering to God, so he gets a schar for that. Someone whose mind is lowly. That means he's humble. The the verse in the Bible seems to imply that it's as though he brought all sorts of korbanot. You could bring an olah, you could bring a mincha, but if you have a low spirit, a humble spirit, so it's like he brought all the korbanos. What does it say? Zivchei Elokim ruach nishbara. Says the sacrifices to God. Zevach is the type of sacrifice that's slaughtered. One's given to God. What is it? A broken spirit. That's in Tehillim. And in Sota it says, ma kesher bein anava lekarbanot. What's the connection between humility and the sacrifices? So Rav Tzuriel answers, V'nirali al pi maharal. Here's how it goes. According to the Maharal, what does the Maharal say? Hakothev, he writes, Ki matarat haba'atha korbanot hi lehanech shakol efes zulad Hashem yitbarach. The point of the korbanot is to teach that everything is actually nothing compared to God. There's only God. Everything else is just nothingness. Where are figments of God's imagination? Continues. Or the Nivraim, that which you see exist, Haim davar zulato, that they actually exist independent of God. Im kain hu yithbarach yachsar davar she'anim tza'im zulato. Could he actually lack anything? Of course not. This is really profound. Imagine that if God removed His word, so to speak, He could just go. Everything would be nothing again. Right? Aval ena davar kach. It's not. This is not the case. Kikol nimtza'im shavim means with a bet. Okay. All of that which exists eventually returns to what? A lav bamitat mitzuto. They eventually become exactly what they really were all along. Everything is actually nothing, and everything turns back to nothing. And what did God say to Adam when he sinned? Afarata vel afar tashuv. You're just animated dirt, and you know what? When your time comes, you know what you become? Dirt. You turn back into dirt. Nistawa alul b'akravada korban. That's why you alul, the type of people who have a dependent existence, that's what an alul is, they have an alilah, they were commanded to bring sacrifice. Adam Risha, what's the first thing he did after he sinned? He brought sacrifice. That's what it says. He pointed out in Rosh Hashanah time. Remember what the rabbi said? The pasuk in Bereshit says that Risha was sent out of Gan Eden to go back to worship God in the place where he was created. He was created at Makom Mizbeach, so he was sent back to worship God there. Sacrificing the animal shows you that there's only God, everything else is nothing compared to him. Ad kan lishono. That's what the Maharal says.
Doesn't that say that they took from Adam that took all the Shiva?
Yeah, but where did he create him? No, he created him and he brought him to Gan Eden only once he created him. It says it. It says in the Psukim, it says God created Adam, Afar bin Adama, and it says Vaikach Hashem Elokim et Adam, Vayanichinu ve'agen Eden. First it says God created Gan Eden, God created man, and then he came Vaikach, and Rashi says Vaikach means he talked him into it. He says, do you want to work for me? I have a garden for you. And he brought him there, and Adam sinned, and it says he kicked him out of Gan Eden, sent him back to where he came from. And then Chazal said, yeah, and he was built at Makom Mizbeach, that's where he was created, and technically speaking, that's where he should be buried. But we saw this months ago. So Rav Tzuriel says, Kilomar, Ka'asher shochatim et achai. When we slaughtered this living animal, according to the Ramban, remember we saw this when we were talking about kaparas. The Ramban says regarding sacrifice, when you do it right, zebim komzeh, which by the way is one of the problems. If you do that with a chicken, when you do a korban, you're saying zebim komzeh. You're watching the animal in the temple be slaughtered. If you take a chicken, which isn't really for korban, and you do this without a mizbeach outside the temple, you're doing it wrong. If you want to do a zebim komzeh, do it right. You're not allowed to do zecher either. No, Vilna says you're only allowed to do zechers that actually teach you the right halacha. Yeah, that's another word, but we'll get to that later. And then you see after slaughtering this animal how chelkei basar, the pieces of its flesh, turn back into a spoonful of deshen, ashes, the afer and dust. Bilvad, that's all they become. Okay, take an animal. It's like we're going to talk about tapuach in the base of Mikvah. What's the tapuach? Pile of ashes. You burn korbanos. When you burn something, it really reduces its volume. Most of it becomes smoke, right?
Made of water.
It's mostly water, and all you get is a few ashes. You made a bonfire, you get a pile of wood, right? What's left? Just a burning wood. What's left of it at the end? Very much less, right? So it says, Makir Adam ba'af siyut shel kol hachomer. Watching this process, man realizes the nothingness of physical matter. And that's why the sacrificial ritual is a good tool for a person realizing true humility. That's the connection between humility in this pasuk and the act of korbanos. With that introduction, thank you, Rav Suryo. Well, he's even less than dirt. Yeah, mostly gases. Yes, you can convert if you chas v'shalom were to burn a person or any animal. So it's 70% water. All that water in the burning process evaporates. Yeah, and a lot of other stuff burns also turns into other gaseous forms. So there's very little left of the physical, and that's what korbanos is supposed to teach you about. So for many people, if you had, like I said, $1,000 lying around, it's one thing to give it to the poor. Yeah, your poor people need it. Usually it's right now, but not all money needs to go to the poor because a lot of times it doesn't help them. It just helps them continue with their poverty. Yeah.
You don't give money to a poor person to help you.
Well, you do it because God said so.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I'm saying that some people would argue today that just take all the money. When you walked out, we said this. Take all your money instead of giving it to the temple or for korbanos. Don't the poor need the money more? And the answer is not necessarily. It's good to give also to make the Beis Hamikdash. Yeah, it doesn't help you. For certain people, it's better to give money to the temple and just give it up. If you bring a gigantic bull as a korban, you're just giving up on your money. That's better for your neshama, for your seichel and for your mind, for your spirit. That is, your way of thinking than it is to give it to the charity. So we have to know that.